Welcome to the eighth episode, The Narrative Center of Gravity. Let's revert to the flame from our first episode. There, we saw that when we look more deeply, a flame is not a static object but a continuously flowing process. Knowing this need not take away the pleasure we feel in telling a story about it. In literature, a flame is often described in terms such as the flame licked greedily at the wooden walls, or the fire raged through the town. Sean Carroll, physicist and professor at Johns Hopkins University, calls this poetic naturalism. As he puts it in his book, naturalism tells us what is the physics behind the phenomena, but we tell stories that are what he is calling poetic. I thought this a lovely way to put it, so I will use the term poetic naturalism henceforth whenever the need arises. There is one more term which I will now introduce, which serves as another useful tool. Recall your school physics lessons where we learned about the center of gravity. The center of gravity is that spot in an object where the total weight is concentrated. If you support an object exactly at this center, it will remain balanced without tipping over. You may have seen a toy that vividly demonstrates this principle, a toy jumbo jet balancing by its nose on a needle point. You can say that the gravitational lines of force converge at this point. The center of gravity is a conceptual abstraction. It is not a physical part that actually exists at the center of an object. In his book, Consciousness Explained, the late Daniel Dennett, professor of cognitive science at Tufts University, explains that the self is exactly the same type of abstraction. The brain is a collection of decentralized processes. The brain weaves narratives from all these inputs. The self is the abstract point at which all these stories converge. This point is the center of narrative gravity. The self is a result, not a cause. That is, it is not a self that is sitting and doing the thinking and doing the storytelling. It is the thinking and the storytelling that give rise to a feeling of a self. The self, the feeling of an I, is an illusion. It is a useful illusion, especially for humans who have built a complex civilization based on it. We are biological ships of Theseus. Though everything about the ship changes, the identity, the I, is a story, a narrative. It is poetic naturalism. At this point in the journey, you may begin to wonder, why are you so intent on dismantling and dissolving the self? Let me say right now that the journey we are on is not the destruction of the self. The point of the journey is that we can cherish and love the self of poetic naturalism without being deluded by a false notion of what it is not. The reason to see it for what it really is to begin to disentangle ourselves from disempowering narratives that lead to suffering and disease. Some of these disempowering narratives are outright superstitions, others are more subtle. We will tackle them in later episodes. Let me introduce one final concept in this episode. Early in human evolution, it was important to detect which creatures and objects had goals that were contrary to yours. This resulted in a tendency of the brain called hyperactive agency detection. The term was coined by psychologist Justin Barrett. Imagine you are an early human walking in a jungle. a bush next to you rustles. It is far safer for the brain to assume that some creature like a snake caused it, so that you stay away from it. This tendency is what led to humans assuming that a spirit is behind the movement of fire. The hyperactive agency detector, or HAD, is the reason we believe some agent inside us is causing our actions. This agent is the protagonist in our stories and narratives. Let's summarize this episode. Point number one: scientific realism tells us we are biological ships of Theseus. Point number two: the hyperactive agency detection device posits a virtual captain inside this ship of Theseus, an I, a me. Point number three: the various stories woven by the brain converge at an abstract center, the narrative center of gravity. Point number four: the I, or me, posited by the hyperactive agency detector occupies the narrative center of gravity. Point number five: poetic naturalism means we can enjoy the stories even when knowing it is an illusion. Point number six: the reason to see through the illusion is to recognize how we can use narratives instead of being entangled in them and struggling. Let me describe an experiment you can do today. Walk to a window of your room and look out. You know that all you see is outside. Inside the room is you. Now get back to your chair. You can see outside your head through your eyes, and your eyes feel as if they are windows. But what is it that is looking out through the eyes? I'll see you in the next episode.